Hi guys, welcome to a new episode of 12:20 Cooking UK at night. So I thought I would show you how I make my chicken stock. And chicken stock is super useful for so many dishes. For pastina, which we know we love in winter. For vegetable soups, you can use it, and I like to use my leftover stock and concentrate it into stock cubes, so for like little flavor boosts. It's something you can really use for loads of other recipes. So my simple chicken stock has a whole chicken, has 2 onions, some frozen celery, but it's frozen because I did a recipe earlier which didn't need all of the celery, and 2 carrots. You can also add potatoes, but in this occasion I'm not going to. And let me show you how it's done. So clearly I've been chopping onions, which, it's inevitable. They've said if you put a spoon in your mouth, apparently it will make you cry. But yeah, it makes you cry. So I've peeled my onions. I had an incident, so it's an onion and a half now. We've got our celery, I keep it whole. Carrots topped and tailed and cleaned. And I'm putting everything in an empty pot. So pop in my celery, pop in my carrots, pop in my onions. And then I'm going to pop in my chicken. Really push it in there. And I'm going to put everything with cold water. So if you want, we have rules in Italian cooking, always. If you want good meat, you put the meat into hot water, boiling water. If you want good broth, you put everything into cold water. So I'm focusing on the broth more than the meat, even though the meat, we will use it for other recipes. And usually I take the meat and put it into bag portions and freeze them and use them for chicken pastina, or I use them for a chicken salad. So we want good broth. So I'm going to put some cold water in. Okay, excuse the incident earlier. So I've added about 3 jugs of water, and I'm just going to add a little bit more. And I want to almost cover the chicken, but it needs space obviously to boil. And now I'm just going to turn on the heat. And I'm going to cover her up. And the first, when it initially bubbles, you'll see a little bit of kind of scum rising to the top. I need to skim that off with a scumarola. I don't know what it's called in English, but we'll skim it off. And once we've skimmed all of that, that's the impurities that's in the chicken. So any kind of, impurities that it could have. So we skim that off, and then we let it continue boiling for about 2 hours. You can leave it for longer. So I'll show you what it looks like in a little bit. So you might notice I haven't added any salt yet, and that's because at this point, if you add salt, it will just draw out even more impurities. So what I like to do is to salt my broth and to season my broth towards the end of cooking. Also, nice thing to add, if you have a Parmigiano Reggiano rind, you can add that in at this point for some more umami flavor. Okay, so we've been boiling for a little bit, and there's a little bit to skim on the top, but not much, which is good. Sorry, I need to swap hands. And any also loose feathers that come out, that's a good thing to remove. But this broth and this chicken seems pretty good to go. So I'm going to leave it on for about 2 hours. Then we're going to come back tomorrow morning, because overnight it's going to cool down. And what happens when it cools down is all the fat comes to the top, and we can remove the fat, making it super healthy and just much easier to digest. Or just so something else to skim. So you can skim these kind of dark grey bits. Don't know if you can see, but that's what you want to remove as an impurity from the chicken. But yeah, just wait for 2 hours and I'll show you what it looks like in a bit. forgot to mention, so it's just simmering, so on the lowest heat that you can, and I'm putting the lid back on, but slightly askew, so some of the vapor can come out, but we don't want too much evaporation. So go about your business, do whatever you want. I'm gonna game, surprise, surprise, and just keep on checking back that everything is doing well and hasn't spilled over. So this has now been simmering away for about 2 hours, and the smell is incredible, and it's been under the watchful eye of Falcone Falconetti. And what I'm going to do now is turn off the heat, and you can see some fat has come to the top, which is completely normal because we have some skin in there, which makes it taste good. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover it up and leave it to cool down overnight, so then in the morning we can skim the fat off. See you then. When your broth needs a little bit more cooling for the fat to solidify and you live in a London flat, that's where you put it. So it's been overnight and the broth has cooled down, but the fat hasn't solidified yet. So what I've done is I've popped it in the fridge, and I'm gonna now cover it up, and we'll see you again at the end of the day. So the broth has been in the fridge for quite a while now, and you can see on top the fat from the chicken has now solidified, and that means that you can skim the fat off and make it actually a really healthy broth. You remove all the fat, and then what I'm going to do is take out the chicken, the veggies, pop it all here for me to kind of take apart, and then I'm going to heat up the broth again, taste it, season it, and then put 2 bottles aside for dishes I'm going to make this week, and the rest I'm going to concentrate down. So let's start removing the fat. It's super easy, as you can see, and I've got a bowl ready on the side, and I'm going to keep on doing that. The fat's all removed, and it's a super clear broth, and then now I'm just going to take out all the pieces, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so I've removed the fat, I've removed the chicken, incredibly whole, and I've removed all the veggies, and I've put it in here so that if any kind of extra broth is in here, I just pop it back in the pan. So now what I'm going to do is heat up my broth again, just to warm it through so I can taste and season, and then I'm going to filter it and put it in my bottles. While I've been waiting for my broth to warm back up to room temperature, more or less, I have shredded the chicken. I have not shown that on camera because I think this chicken has gone through enough on camera. And what I'm going to do now is taste my broth and then season. So let me give it a taste. Perfect. So it's obviously it hasn't had any seasoning so far, and all you can taste is the sweetness from the carrot, the chicken, the onion, everything we've put in there, you can taste. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to season with salt because I'm going to use this broth for other dishes. So with salt you bring out, you exalt the flavors that already exist. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of salt in there. Let that kind of warm through and melt into the broth. And then I'm going to show you how I filter and pop it into bottles. While I'm waiting for the broth to melt that salt, you might ask, what am I going to do with all this chicken? It's a lot of chicken. What I usually do is the next day I'll make a chicken salad, or even for tonight for dinner. And then I like to take these really small single portion IKEA bags or Ziploc bags and pop in chicken for a single portion. That's great to top up your pastina if you need some protein for a salad, for a sandwich, for anything. So this is not going to go to waste. And it looks like a lot, but actually it's only about 3 or 4 meals. but nothing goes to waste. My broth is warmed through, the salt is all integrated, and what I'm going to do now is show you how I filter. So I just take a nice ladle, and without making the biggest mess in the world, I just put everything into a jug. It will take many passes to filter out all this broth, and it obviously doesn't filter it perfectly. If you wanted a completely clear broth, then use a cheesecloth or use a tea towel. That will take out any bit of residue that is in this broth. And here is our first jug of broth. So I use a jug to be able to transfer the broth much more easily in something like this. I like to use glass bottles, but only for the broth I'm going to use in the next couple of days. Do not put this glass bottle in the freezer. I found out the hard way that liquids expand, and I had a lot of broth and broken glass in my freezer. So please don't use glass for your freezer. This is great for the fridge because it's a normal size, and yeah, it will be easy to store. So I like to pour my broth as cleanly as I can without spilling anything. I got it. I like to leave a little bit of space on the top. So this bottle is done, and I'm going to do my next bottle, which is an old passata sauce bottle. These are super useful. Keep them. They're great for your broth, great for any sauces left over. Make sure to always keep your glassware. Okay, so now I've got two beautiful bottles of broth ready. I haven't sealed them properly because they need to cool down. Let them cool down, then pop them in the fridge and use them throughout the week. But I've got leftover stock. Oh God, what am I gonna do? What I like to do is to concentrate this broth down at least by half or 3/4, and I use that as stock cubes. So after that's cooled down, I'll pop it in ice cube bags, which I like to use, and then you can store them in your freezer and they become like little stock cubes, which is great. And you know exactly what's gone in there, you know exactly the Italian amount of salt that's gone in there, and it's a way not to waste anything. The stock has been boiling down for a little bit. We've gone 3/4 of evaporation, so there's not much left, which is great. So that's a concentrated flavor. I'm going to turn off the heat now. And what I'm going to do, once it cools down, filter it in the same way I did for the broth, and then pop it in these ice cube bags. And they're great because they're self-sealing, and then each cube will be a portion of stock cube. And I will show you what that looks like later. So our process is finally finished. We made broth from scratch, chicken broth from scratch. And as you remember, we started off with a large chicken. We started off with a huge pan of water, carrots, onion, celery. And this is what we get from it. We have 2 of these bottles of immediately usable stock. I'm going to use that this week for pastina, for tortellini in brodo, for vegetable soup, for chicken soup. I also have 5 handy bags of single portion pre-shredded chicken. I'm going to be using these 2 immediately. The rest I put in the freezer. And the rest of my stock, I boiled it down and put it into this really handy ice cube bag. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to freeze it, and anytime I need a burst of kind of chicken flavor, umami flavor, I'm gonna use one of those. Again, thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and join in on the fun. Thanks again. Bye.